What's up everyone, my name is Guillaume and welcome to a new episode of Hit the Tone. Hey guys, I hope you're all doing fantastic today and welcome to this new episode of Hit the Tone on Thomann Guitars and Basses. If you're not familiar with the format, go check out the playlist in the description box down below. I'm taking a bunch of cool songs and try to give you all the tools you need to hit the tone. If I haven't covered your favorite songs yet, just leave it in the comment section and I'll get to you as soon as I can. And while you're down there, if you can consider liking this video, subscribing to the channel, that would be marvelous. Thank you so very much in advance. And with that said, let's start with today's song, which is Every Breath You Take by The Police. There's one of you guys, and I'm sorry because I can't remember your YouTube handle tag, who's been requesting Every Breath You Take on pretty much every video for the past 2-3 months, even maybe more so. So this one's for you. It's a really cool song, obviously, and it's always good to sort of, refresh your memory as to why Andy Summers is such a legend on the guitar. So we're going to start with the guitar itself for today, which is this Fender Vintera Telecaster custom, beautiful guitar, beautiful sounding, beautiful playing, and it matches Andy's weapon of choice with a single coil in the bridge and a humbucker. This one is a wide range in the neck position. But for this song, we'll be playing in the bridge, so regular single coil. If you have a Strat, if you have any sort of, guitar with a single in the bridge, that should work just fine. But I mean, it's Andy Summers. I think it's got to be a Tele, right? So that's going to be my guitar for the day. Let's talk about the amp and pedal setup. And this is what's really cool about it, because when you think of The Police, you immediately think of that chorusing, obviously, but there's so much more to that sound. So, and in particular for that one, we'll talk about the amp first, because that's a pretty straightforward setup. Andy Summers was a big Marshall user, so that's what I've got going today with the MK2 Studio. It's a mini plexi. I call it mini plexi. Pretty conservative on the volume because we don't want it to break up too much, because the breakup is actually quite different, and we're going to be using a pedal for that in the name of the JHS Bonsai. Again, very low on the gain, but that's going to be our grit, because it's, at least to my ear, a little bit more mid-pushed than what the amp does. I mean, at least it's different mids. So I'm going to be using that very low gain overdrive. Then second in that chain comes the E-Lady by Moore. This is obviously a reproduction of Andy Summers' main pedal, which is the Electro Harmonix Electric Mistress. If you're lucky enough to have one of the vintage units, awesome, that's the sound. There's a new stereo version as well by Electro Harmonix, but it's not in stock at the moment, and that's definitely the next best thing. Very low on everything, because we don't want it to overpower everything, considering that this is just a 1 amp setup. If we were to run that wet dry, I think the levels would be higher up, but in our particular context here, very, very subtle. Then going into a delay in the name of that, Echoplex by MXR, because Andy Summers was using a bunch of different delays, but I think in the studio mostly Echoplex is EP 1, 2, 3, whichever. Very subtle in the mix, but going on with the tempo, so you want to make sure that this is in sync with the tempo of the song. And then we will finish that pretty extensive effect list with the Strymon Flint to add a little bit of reverb. Now, this is not mandatory. I do believe that the reverb was added in post on that particular song, but because the amp doesn't have any reverb, I just threw that in just to say. So if you have anything that's reminiscent of a plate reverb, I would say very low in the mix again, but just to add a little bit of room, a little bit of body to your sound, that would be the way to go. Now let's turn all of that on and see where that takes us. I'm really happy with that sound. I think that's pretty close, even though it's kind of hard to replicate something that's been so arranged, I would say, in post with just your amp and pedal setup. But the goal is to get the end result, right? The final product of that recording. So I think that's a fairly good way to go about it. I'm happy with it. I'm going to stick with it and go on to the final part of that video, which as usual is the most important and is how to play the riff. Now, it would be fair to dub that song Every Wrist You Break, because it's a bit of a stretch. Nothing fancy tuning-wise, we are in E standard. That being said, if you try and play in E standard with the studio version of it, it's not going to match exactly. It's somewhere in between. It's a little bit sharp from A, which is where I'm going to play it, so starting on the 5th fret of the E string. But in every single live version after that, it would be played in A. So we're going to go with that and start by having a look at the fretting hand. Now, I think you understand what I meant by it's a bit of a stretch. Luckily enough, you don't have to phrase that. You could. If you have gigantic fingers, you could absolutely phrase that first chord this way and just, you know, stick to that by keeping your index finger on the 2nd fret, even on the G string there. That's doable. It's not comfortable. For most people, at least. It's a bit of a lifesaver to know that Andy Summers also plays it by moving his index finger from one position to the next on these two big chords, which makes it relatively simpler to play. That being said, because of that very strict tempo going on, there's a lot of precision involved in that, and you want to make sure that every string is fretted precisely, because otherwise, you know, chorus and delay, one, you know, wrong note or one just like scraping or whatever, and you're gonna hear it for a little bit longer than you would like to. So if you're only beginning with guitar, this might not be the right song for you. You might want to start out with something that doesn't require that kind of stretch, but it's definitely good practice. It's such an iconic intro as well. So I'm sure if you work on it, you'll get there in no time. But yeah, keep that in mind. If you can't do it right now, it's perfectly normal. It's a bit of a stretch. But with all that said, let's have a look at the picking side of it. Not much going on that side. You could do it by just down picking, you could do it by alternate pick, you can do it with a pick, you can do it without a pick. I think sound-wise, using the pick makes the most sense. And so with that in mind, I think that's it, guys. You have all the tools you need to hit the tone on Every Breath You Take by The Police. As usual, I hope that you had fun and maybe you've learned a thing or two in that video, and if so, please consider liking it and subscribing to the channel so that you don't miss out on the next one, because it very well could be your song. Just let me know in the comment section which one you want me to cover, and I'll get to you as soon as I can. In the meantime, I wish you all a fantastic week, and I'll see you next Monday in a new episode of Hit the Tone.